Because have you seen the goings on? I mean, where do we even begin, everybody? So we've had a situation today. We've had the 62nd Tory MP now say that they will not stand again. This whole notion of when are the Tories going to call a general election? Will it be this date? Will it be that date? Whatever. Some people were suggesting it should have been early May, perhaps the same date as the local elections. That now is not going to happen. I'll just remind you, in case you've just tuned in, you've had this whole brood of chickens descend on Downing Street. Listen to this. I mean, son, what did you do? What did you get up to at work today? Well, Mum, I dressed as a chicken, meets Rishi Sunak and clucked outside of Downing Street. A job someone's got to do, I'm sure. But anyway, of course, he's been called chicken. People are saying we need to have a general election now. Apparently, Daniel, there's rumours of no confidence letters going in. More and more, apparently, if rumours to be believed, with Rishi Sunak. What do you make to it all?
Well, these people in the chicken suits, I'm assuming they're people from the leader's office, the opposition leader's office, Starmer's office, out there dressed like that. And just remember, if you vote Labour, these are the people who are going to be running the country, because they'll all be in Downing Street with him, with or without their chicken suits. I mean, it's a complete joke, the whole thing, isn't it? You know, you don't want these people anywhere near the...
Your lot never dressed up?
As far as we dress up properly in suits and ties, out of respect for the public.
You've dressed up in the past, your lot. You've done the same.
No.
What do you make to that stunt?
I think it's fair enough. I thought we livened up the day's news agenda, actually. I mean, a lot of people do think he's chickened out, don't they?
Well, so do you think there should be a general election? Perhaps let's just use that provisional date that people wanted on the 2nd of May.
Well, I think it should come sooner rather than later, just because Rishi himself has not been elected by the British public. He was elected by a very small...
Gordon Brown. Just like Gordon Brown, who wasn't even elected by members of the Labour Party because he ensured there were no other candidates the Putin style.
Well, I'm not sure about that comparison, but the Putin reference. But the Gordon, we hadn't had so many prime ministers. I was about to say at the end of so many prime ministers and so much change. I think it's particularly, you know.
Yeah, but them's the rules, though, isn't it? So if everyone was fine when it did happen, say, with the Brown example that we've just been quoting, then if people were livid about it, then they could have changed the rules, but no one did.
Yeah, I'm not saying he hasn't got the right to carry on, but I think there is a sense out there that many people would welcome a general election now. I think you'd probably agree with that, wouldn't you?
Me personally... I get myself into trouble about this because I'm not someone that's sitting here desperate, oh, yeah, please take me to the ballot box with my pencil, please. I'm not really in that camp. And if I was Rishi Sunak, I think I'd be in two minds, because part of me, Daniel, would be thinking, do you know what, I'm absolutely fed up of all of this now. You know what, have it, somebody else. The flip side of it would be, do you know what, no, I want to cling on to power for as long as I can, see whether or not I can turn things around.
Well, I'm sure he's in two minds, because all prime ministers keep all the options open until the last minute. So he's thinking, I'm sure, about lots of different dates, and he's in two minds, or even more than two minds, about when it should be. I personally wrote an article a couple of weeks ago in one of the Sunday papers saying I thought we should have an early general election because there are lots of problems to be solved, and basically the civil service is not working for the government anymore. They're not doing anything. They're all imagining there's going to be a Starmer government, and they've got their eyes on that. And also because although things are bad in the polls for the Conservatives at the moment, it is possible they'll get better, but it's just as possible that they'll get worse. So I think there is a case for going to the country relatively soon, not necessarily on the 2nd of May, because I think that confuses it with the local elections, but it could be sometime before the summer. And we could then have a decision made by the electorate about where we go.
Yeah.
I think, you know, clinging on to the very end, I think will damage the Conservatives, because I think people will see that as being, well, what are you achieving during this period? And I think...
Trying to achieve results, surely trying to... Because people will say the Tories have had 14 years to do whatever it is, but actually, surely then your pushback should be, or would be, well, first of all, you had a coalition, then you've had all of the kind of backlash, if you like, or trying to steady the ship off the back of Brexit, then literally then you've had COVID, then you're trying to get back on your feet after COVID, then you've had the Ukraine war, then you've tried to get yourself back on the feet there, and then you've had the situation in Israel and Gaza, so really there's not been a second of breathing space.
Yeah, you could say
I should do the Tory party PR.
Are you in the right job?
I know.
And all of that is very true and very important. I don't think we're talking about the last 14 years, though. I think we're talking about what the Prime Minister has promised he's going to do this year. And he's given us 5 pledges. Don't ask me exactly what all 5 are. But the question...
You don't know your 5 pledges?
No, I don't go around with a pledge card.
enough.
That was a Labour thing.
That's fair enough that he doesn't. It's fair enough that he doesn't. It's
Why is it?
Because he's working all day, and I think the idea that you put someone on the spot to show that they've learnt the mantra and they can be a good boy or girl and recite them by heart.
No. Let me be clear. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot and get you into trouble for not knowing them. But these are the collective 5 priorities of the nation now. This is what he said that he wants to be judged on, but they're all things that we, as a collective, should try and want to make progress towards. Can you remember the 5?
I think I just remember the budget that Liz Truss did that stuck all our mortgages up by record sums. That's what we don't talk about enough.
But you see, this is fascinating to me because if you can't even recite, not recite, that sounds like some kind of weird cult thing, which I don't intend to suggest, but if people don't even know what the 5 are, so it was something like cut debt, grow the economy, stop the boats, waiting lists, waiting lists for the NHS and inflation. There you go.
Yeah, we got them.
Yeah, we did.
But people will judge... Michelle, sorry to interrupt, because it's the danger of being slightly pro-conservative, this discussion, but they've had a long time in office on all these things, and that outside of the Westminster bubble, and you'll be aware of this because you're out and about, but people are asking, do I feel better off after... It is a 14-year Conservative leadership.
Yeah,
that's
but then
the question.
what would you say then to the points that I just raised? Because if I was Sunak, that's the kind of thing that I would be saying. You've had these humongous global events that are outside the control of any leader, whether it would be Starmer or Sunak or whoever.
I think that there is an attempt by the Conservatives to get themselves off the hook for example, the NHS has got record waiting lists. It didn't under Labour.
No,
mortgages have gone up, and ordinary men and women and families are paying loads of more money as a result of what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did overnight. That's real. They impacted on so many lives, and they're not going to be allowed off the hook, guys.
It's complete fantasy. Mortgage interest rates are high. They're at the same level as they were under Blair, by the way. We had artificially low interest rates from 2008 until recently, and that released inflation eventually. Mortgage rates have gone up in order to bring inflation down. That will be one of the 5 successes, because we will have brought inflation down even further by the end of the year, almost certainly. That's the one thing you can bank on in the 5 of the 5 pledges. But the cost to that, because inflation is a monetary phenomenon, is that you have to have higher interest rates. That's nothing to do with Liz Truss's budget. That's to do with a strategy for bringing inflation down. And we've succeeded in doing that. On the other things, though, it's going to be difficult for the government. I think it's got to pass the Rwanda bill, and I think that will happen probably in the course by the end of April. I think the bill will have got royal assent, but he will have needed by then. He'll need to show the planes taking off and people leaving. And then I think people will be convinced that something is actually happening in relation to that particular problem. But, you know, there is progress on some of the other topics, but not necessarily enough.
You see, many people now, like John, for example, Kevin's saying that he wants in a general election pretty much straight away whenever we could. But John's saying, but when would we even learn what Labour's key policies are? Well, I would say to John that they're all out there. I mean, they're so good, our policies, right? Daniel's party's nicking them. Right, and we were told for years, oh, you can't clamp down on the tax exemptions for non-doms. It's a terrible idea. It will disincentivise business people like myself, because all those from abroad. And now the Conservative Party stole that policy, whether it's on the NHS, schools, crime, GB Energy, the environment, industrial strategy. There are clear missions that have been set out by Keir, and the manifesto will be costed. So I totally respect John's desire for more detail, but Labour are not in government at the moment, and the government are stealing Labour's policies when they get the chance. And I just get the sense, I'm trying to be very fair and balanced in this, and I just get the sense that people think the Tories have had their go. Well, there you go, John. Apparently those policies are out there. You just need to look slightly harder. You say as well, Kevin, that the Tories, for example, shouldn't be let off the hook in terms of interest rates with mortgage. What I think that so many people shouldn't be let off the hook, quite frankly, with their ridiculous, and we disagree, but their ridiculous panicked response to COVID. It was that when you point out things like inflation, waiting lists, this mental health crises that everyone seems to have these days, you can almost boil so much of it down down to the over-hysterical reaction to COVID, this blanket response to lock everybody down irrespective of their risk level. And many of the politicians would have had us locked down for a much, much longer period than they currently did. And a harder lockdown as well. I would say that is some of the things that people perhaps shouldn't forget. Anyway, look, when we come back after the break... Well, look at him. He's groaning. I'll give him a chance to respond to me. I can handle that. He can respond to me after the break. We'll continue the politics conversation.
I can't say nothing. Every time you mention COVID and you talk about the politicians, how they got this wrong, that wrong,
yeah.
I am obliged for balance to say that we were faced with a historic challenge. People were dying left, right and centre. The lockdowns were needed, in my opinion. The vaccines came through. And the biggest scandal, actually, is the billions of pounds of our public money wasted by contracts to Tory pals, the VIP fast lanes, e.g. Baroness Moan. But there you are. That's balance.
There you go. You see, consider yourself balanced. We used to have these arguments at the time, didn't we?
We did.
This is not
too many times to mention.
This is not hindsight stuff, ladies and gents. We used to disagree at length during those periods. I remember it well. I'll never, ever forget it.